Hey, fellas, I'm Emmy, and I'm here to tell you a story that'll make your blood boil, or maybe make you feel sorry for me. I don't know. 20 years ago, I thought I had it all. A loving husband, two beautiful boys, a cozy home in the suburbs. But I threw it all away for a cheap thrill that wasn't even worth it. I cheated on my husband, Jim, with a neighbor, and when he found out, he wouldn't even let me touch him anymore. Stick with me, because this one's a roller coaster. Hit that like button if you've ever been betrayed, or if you've been the one to betray. And let's see if I can fix the mess I made. I was 22. Jim was 39, and we'd been married for 13 years. We had two boys, 9 and 11, who were the spitting image of their dad. Same blue eyes, same stubborn streak, same big heart. Jim was everything I'd ever dreamed of in a man. He was a hard worker, a carpenter who built our home with his own hands, and he always made time for us. He'd come home after a long day, still covered in sawdust, and wrestle with the boys in the backyard until they were all laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. At night, we'd sit on the porch with a couple of beers, talking about nothing and everything. I loved him more than I can put into words. So why did I cheat? That's the question I've been asking myself for the last 2 years, and I still don't have a good answer. It started with Steve, our neighbor. He and his wife, Marcia, moved in down the street. A young couple, late 20s, with 3 kids of their own. They were the talk of the neighborhood, mostly because they were the youngest folks around. The rest of us were in our 40s and 50s, some even older. So Steve and Marcia stood out. We met them at a neighborhood picnic, and I'll never forget the way Steve looked at me that day. It wasn't just a glance, it was a stare, the kind that made my stomach flip in a way it hadn't since I was a teenager. I was 18 the first time I felt that kind of pull. Back when I met a guy named Charles at a friend's barbecue. Charles was my first real romance, my first everything, and the attraction was like a wildfire. Hot, reckless, impossible to control. We didn't last long, but that feeling stuck with me. And when I saw Steve, it came roaring back. Steve worked at a car dealership, and a few weeks after the picnic, Jim and I went there to look for a new SUV. When Jim found out Steve worked in finance, he thought it'd be great to support the neighbor. Steve got us a good deal, handled the financing, and through the whole process, he kept catching my eye. Jim didn't notice. He was too busy talking about the car's towing capacity. But I felt it. A few days later, I had to go back to the dealership to get mud flaps installed. Steve greeted me in the lounge, then pulled me into his office to discuss additional financing details. That's when it happened. He told me he couldn't stop thinking about me, that he felt something the moment we met. I admitted I felt it too, even though I knew it was wrong. He didn't care. He wanted me. And I let myself get swept away. The affair lasted 5 months, but we were only physical 4 times. It wasn't love. Steve loved Marcia, and I loved Jim. It was just physical, a forbidden thrill that made my heart race. But it wasn't even good, not compared to what I had with Jim. Looking back, I think I was desperate for something new. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 11 years. And while I loved my boys, I felt stuck. Steve's attention made me feel alive again, like I was 18 and reckless. Not 32 with a mortgage and a minivan. I thought I could have my secret adventure and still keep my perfect marriage. I was dead wrong. One Thursday morning, 19 months ago, it all came crashing down. Steve and I were at his house. Our kids were at school. Jim was at work. Marcia was on a shift at the hospital. We were in bed when Marcia's mother walked in. She'd come by to drop off some groceries. And there we were, caught red-handed. She started screaming, calling us every name in the book. She slapped Steve so hard, She left a gash on his face, then turned on me, hit me square in the jaw, and yanked out 2 handfuls of my hair. I barely had time to grab my clothes before I ran out of there. My heart pounding so hard, I thought I'd pass out. I got home, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall for hours, trying to figure out how to tell Jim. I knew my marriage was over, or at least it'd never be the same. I called him, left an urgent message saying we needed to talk, but he didn't answer. I texted him. Still nothing. Then Marcia and her mother showed up at my door, banging on the windows, screaming for me to come out. He hid, terrified, thanking God the boys were at school. After they left, I broke down, crying until I fell asleep on the couch. When I woke up, I heard Jim's car in the driveway. I rushed to freshen up, trying to pull myself together. But when I went to the living room, he didn't come inside. Through the window, I saw him walking down the street, straight to Steve and Marcia's house. He was there for 3 hours. I watched the clock, my stomach in knots, knowing he was hearing everything. When he finally came home, I tried to hug him, but he pushed me away, his face cold as stone. "Don't," he said. I started apologizing, begging him to listen, but he cut me off. "Your apology isn't accepted," he said. "I want you out." I fell to my knees, sobbing, telling him I didn't want to go, but he wouldn't budge. He called my mom, told her what I'd done, and asked her to come pick me up. She showed up, apologized to Jim for me, and convinced me to go to her place for the night. I left in tears, asking Jim what he'd tell the boys. "I'll handle it," he said. And that was that. Now, fellas, if you've ever been on either side of a betrayal like this, drop a comment below. Just say, "I've been there." I'll read everyone and reply. Keep listening, because I'm gonna tell you how I tried to fix this and whether it worked. That night at my mom's, I called Jim, and to my surprise, he picked up. "Hello," he said, then went silent. I apologized again, promised I'd never do it again, swore I'd spend the rest of my life making it up to him. He didn't say a word, just listened until I ran out of things to say. "You done?" he asked. I said yes. And then he dropped a bomb. "I want a divorce," he said. I broke down, begging for another chance. But he wouldn't hear it. "I'd rather lose half of everything I've worked for than stay with you," he told me. Then he said something that cut even deeper. "I'd give you everything I own if you'd just disappear and leave me and the boys alone." I cried all night, replaying his words, knowing I'd broken the best man I'd ever known. But I wasn't ready to give up. I came up with a plan. A post-nuptial agreement so lopsided in his favor that he'd have to give me a second chance. I met with 4 different lawyers before I found one who'd draft it. The agreement gave Jim everything if we stayed married for 30 months. He'd keep nearly all our marital assets. If I cheated again, I'd get nothing. No alimony, no child support, nothing. I had to get a full-time job within 6 months and contribute to the household. And Jim could see other women if he wanted. I knew he wouldn't, but I wanted him to know I'd give him that freedom. I had Jim served with the agreement. The same day, he served me divorce papers. That night, we talked. He was surprised by the offer, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of the man I loved, not the cold, robotic stranger he'd become. To my shock, he accepted, but with one condition. We wouldn't share a bed or have any physical relationship for the rest of our marriage. I hesitated, but I agreed, hoping I could win him back over time. 17 months into what I called our second marriage, things weren't what I'd hoped. We were more like housemates, raising our boys together but nothing more. Jim showed me no affection, not a hug, not a kiss, nothing. He wouldn't even let me near him. If I tried to hug him, he'd stiffen and pull away, his face hard. He made me take monthly STD tests at home. Like I was some kind of criminal. We never went out in public together. Not to the boys' games, not to family events. When the boys had soccer matches, we'd alternate who took them. If I went, Jim would show up but stand on the sidelines with the other dads, acting like I wasn't there. The only time we were together was on family vacations. Adjoining rooms, separate beds, the boys in one room, us in the other. Those trips were the closest we got, and I'd try to break through to him, but he kept his walls up. The neighborhood didn't help. Steve and Marcia divorced 8 months after we got caught, but Marcia and her kids still lived down the street. The women I used to be friends with cut me off, blaming me for breaking up their family. My home felt like a prison. I stopped going outside, sticking to my backyard, tending to my gardens. The boys were fine, still playing with their friends, including Marcia's kids. But I was a pariah. Jim, on the other hand, fit right in with the neighborhood guys, smoking cigars, sipping bourbon, laughing like nothing had happened. He'd go to work, hit the gym, come home, and avoid the dinners I made. On weekends, he'd grill for himself and the boys, eating only what he cooked, like my food wasn't good enough anymore. I tried to make things work. Dinners with the boys became my lifeline. We'd eat at 4 when they got home from school, setting the table together, prepping food, cleaning up. It brought us closer, taught them skills, and we even built a little garden in the backyard. But with Jim, I was stuck. I suggested we move to a new neighborhood, start afresh, but he refused. I'm not moving unless I get a job that requires it, he said. And the boys don't want to leave their friends. I was trapped, living with the consequences of my mistake every day. 2 years into our second marriage, Jim sat me down and said he wanted a divorce, for real this time. I still love you, he told me, and maybe we can rekindle something in the future. But not while we're married. I feel disrespected and betrayed every day we're together like this. He suggested we celebrate the divorce once it was final. Maybe even spend the night together. It sounded strange, but I was willing to do anything to keep him in my life, even if just as a friend. He made it clear we'd never remarry. If we love each other, we don't need a contract, he said. I agreed, but it broke my heart. I let him keep 3/4 of our marital assets, even though he didn't meet the post-naps 30-month requirement. I didn't ask for alimony or child support. Some might call me a fool, but I felt he'd earned it, and I'd lost my right to fight for it. I moved out a month ago, renting a furnished apartment nearby. It's a relief to be away from the neighborhood. Too many bad memories. All my fault. The boys come over after school a few days a week, and we have dinner together. Jim and I are flexible with their schedule, and they move freely between our places. But being out of the house means I don't see Jim much. I call him sometimes, asking silly questions, just to hear his voice. And we've had a few long talks. I can tell he still cares, but he's not ready to let me back in. Here's what I've learned, fellas, and I hope you hear me. If you're a woman tempted by a thrill, don't do it. The short-term high isn't worth the long-term loss of love, respect, and trust. If you can't control yourself, get help. Talk to a therapist, a friend, anyone. And if you're a man who's been betrayed, I get why you'd shut down. I don't blame Jim for keeping me at arm's length. I did this to us. I'm sharing this because I know someone out there needs to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. I want to know how you've handled betrayal, or if you've ever tried to fix a mistake like mine. I'll pick one to share next week, so make it real. Hit that subscribe button and check out the video next to this one. There's more true stories waiting. Share this with your buddies too. We all need to learn from each other's mistakes.